I'm Melody Fawcett, and today's date is April 13th, 2022. I'm 59, and I am in Seattle, Washington.
I am Joselyn Eitemiller. Today's date is 4/13/2022. I'm 52, and I am recording today in Lacey, Washington.
We talked a couple of weeks ago now, I think, and you briefly shared with me that you were adopted, which I did not know. Do you want to just start from the beginning and tell the story?
I was adopted as a baby in 1970 when most adoptions were closed adoptions. My parents had very little information about who my birth parents were and vice versa. I only knew what my parents were told, which was that my birth parents were both in their early 20s and that they were both artistic in nature. My birth father has a very high IQ. And that's
Wow.
all I knew growing up. But I've always known that I was adopted. My parents already have a daughter who is biologically their child. She's 4 years older than me, and I was adopted through Catholic Social Services out of Lincoln, Nebraska. I grew up very, very happy family. Although not biologically my parents' child, I never felt I wasn't their child. They are my parents, always will be my parents. They did tell me when I was 18 that if I was ever interested in finding my biological family, they would support that. At that time, I didn't want to. It felt like more of a betrayal to them because I have amazing parents. I didn't have questions then. But as I got older, I did. I was probably 28 or 29 when I went home for Christmas one year. Went and got the mail for mom and dad. There was a letter from Catholic Social Services. My whole life, I had never ever seen an envelope from them, ever. I know they probably wanted money. The year that I started thinking about finding my birth family or my biological family, this letter arrived. But I sent a letter to them saying how I could go about having information from my file release. Both my birth mom and my birth father had written letters to say, yeah, if Joselyn, well, Sarah is what they would have named me.
Oh.
Both said they were interested in hearing about me. We started with my birth mom. We exchanged a bunch of pictures and just letters back and forth, a few phone calls. And then about a year later, I decided to get in contact with my birth father, and I was in contact with him for about a year. I never was able to meet him. He has some mental health issues that really didn't make it healthy for me to continue to be in that relationship. It was just giving me a lot of anxiety. To his credit, to this day, he has not ever reached out to me again. But with my birth mom, it was a very different situation. As I started to get to know her, and as I have known her still to this day, it definitely feels like there was some, for lack of a better word, divine intervention on me becoming part of this Eitemiller family that I am part of. There were some cycles that needed to be broken within my birth parents' families. A lot of history of alcoholism. There have been so many times throughout our lives that our families have actually crossed paths. I lived 50 miles away from where my birth mom's family lived their whole lives. So when I was 32, after having messaged and written letters back and forth with my birth mom, decided to meet her at a family reunion. It was just this huge family of hundreds of people. I was raised in Chadron, Nebraska, which is way in the northwest corner of Nebraska. No one ever knows about it. 50 miles away in Alliance, Nebraska is where my birth families came from, the O'Keeffes. I didn't look like anybody. I had blue eyes. All my family has brown eyes. 75% Irish. They're, mostly German. So to have that instant recognition of, oh, that's where that nice little hook in your nose comes from, or, oh, look at how I smile and we both have dimples, or even my laugh. My laugh is the same as my birth mom, Kathy's. As we started digging further, reached out to my sister when I first got information about my birth mom, and she at the time was living in Alliance, Nebraska. I called her and I'm like, hey, if you go to the Catholic cemetery or go to the church, you may see O'Keefe, McCune, Percival. That's my family. She's like, oh yeah, I've taken care of your great aunt many times in the hospital. She's a nurse. She's like, yeah, I know a lot of your birth mom's cousins. At the time, the house she was living in, I was talking to her about the O'Keefes. So she talked to her husband, and finally her husband's like, the O'Keefes are on the deed of our home. It turns out that my great grandfather, I believe, was a clerk in government in Box Butte County, which is where Alliance is. The house that my sister lived in had been the courthouse in Box Butte County for a while, and my grandfather bought it and converted it to a family home. I spent my first 14 years near Chadron State Park, which is this huge acreage of beautiful buttes and pine trees, and there's a swimming pool there. I spent most of my time in the swimming pool. The park ranger's son went to my school because I did go to a 3-room school. We would spend our summers at Chadron State Park riding bikes, probably being a little naughty sometimes and trying to interrupt people having their family reunions, only to find out that probably some of those family reunions were O'Keefe family reunions. Just a lot of connections that were there that I've just found fascinating and comforting and amazing to me.